Hello everyone, welcome back to Valley of the Mist Block of the Month. I'm Adriane Ritter.
And I'm Shelley McNeely.
And this is our July 2025 Block of the Month. And we are doing houses this year. And this month we're doing our vacation house, this cute little camper. So it's really cute, but there was no way to make it without a lot of pieces. So we're just gonna push on ahead. It's summer, you got time, let's go for it. Okay, so a couple things. Please download the instructions because there are a lot of different pieces. And we've tried to put next to them kind of where they go. So hopefully that will help you. If you go to put it together and a piece doesn't seem to be fitting, make sure you've got the right piece. Make sure you've got the right color of that size of piece. And make sure that you cut it right because they all should fit. We've gone over this several times.
Yes.
And refined it and reduced the number of pieces even to make it simpler.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we will be giving you some pressing instructions on this one because if in doubt and it's lumpy, press it open. But definitely press the seam open. But we are on the trees, on the half square triangles, we're pressing those open anywhere that it seems like there's a lot of intersections. And I think that was pretty much the pre-instructions.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so Shelley's going to go over the fabric with you.
Okay, so to start with, our focus fabric this year is called Poppies Tie Dye by Island Batik. And you're going to need this focus fabric if you're going to turn in your block, or make one block at least, to turn in for the drawing at the guild meeting. Otherwise, you can use whatever focus fabric you desire.
I'm not sure if I said, but these are due at the September meeting.
Okay, so to start with, we're going to need your piece of focus fabric for the door, and it's 2.5 by 5.5. Then for the sky, you're going to need two 1-inch squares, and those are Flippies for by the wheel. Then there's one 1-inch by 1.5 inch that goes on the right side of the wheel. Then one 1.5 by 3-inch that goes on the left side of the wheel. And then there's one 1.5 by 4-inch goes under the door. Then there's one 1.5-inch square with the lower left flippy. And then two 1 7/8 by 3 inches, and those for by the tree trunk. And then there's one 2 3/8 inch square, and that's for the right half square triangle.
It's going to make two half square triangles out of that, so you just need one square though.
Yeah. And let's see, where was that? And then three 2 5/8 inch squares for making the tree. Then one 3.5 by 9 inch, and that goes above the camper. Then one 3 3/4 inch by 4 inch, and that goes above the tree. And then there's...
You didn't mention this half square triangle.
That's next.
Oh, okay.
One 3 7/8 inch square, and that we're going to make a half square triangle. Of the half square triangle, you're only going to need half of that. If you make two blocks, and you make your camper the same and your sky the same, you can use the other half.
Right.
Okay. Then there's a window piece, and you need one piece for 2 inches by 2.5 inches. And then for the camper, you need one 1-inch by 5.5 inches, and that goes below the left stripe. And then there's four 1-inch squares, and those are Flippies for the wheel and for the door. And then there's one 1-inch by 4 inches, and that's for the right of the window. And one 1-inch by 1.5 inches, and that's for the right of the wheel. Then one 1.5 by 3 inches, and that's for the left bottom. And then one 1.5 by 2.5, and that goes below the window. Then two 2 inches by 3.5 inches, and that's the middle and left and right sides.
Yeah, so it was hard to describe that. They're the same. They're turned. So one goes right here in the middle of this side. It's the middle orange piece on mine, and this is the other one is the middle orange piece on that side, but turned the other way.
Okay, we still have more to go.
Yeah.
Now we need one 2-inch square that goes above the window. Two 2 3/8 inch squares, and those are for right half square triangles.
Oh yeah, these half square triangles.
Yeah.
Oh, two of those or one?
One.
One. Okay.
Then one 2.5 inch square That's 4 above the door. And then 1 3 7/8 inch square, and that's for the rest of the half square triangle that goes on the by the other side of the by the camper.
Yeah.
Now for the stripe on the camper, you're gonna need one that's 1.5 inches by 5.5 inches, and one that's 1.5 inches by 2 inches.
Okay.
And then for the wheel, you're gonna need 1 2.5 inch square. Then for the tree, you're gonna need 3 2 5/8 inch squares. And for the trunk of the tree, you're gonna need 1 1.25 by 3 inches. And then for the ground, you're gonna need 1 1.5 by 5.5 inches.
And that one, maybe, that's the easiest one to adjust with. So if you just wait to cut that, and maybe it needs to be a little more than, if yours isn't quite 12.5, then you might need to go a little more than the 1.5.
Right.
So you could probably just use that one as your height adjusting and
Right.
cut these ones as you
Yeah.
go. All right. Woo!
I know, that was lots of pieces to think
Okay.
about. That's why it'd be best to lay them out, at least some order.
Yes. Okay, so now in the first section, like I said, we're gonna try to put a bunch of these little pieces together. So in doing that, we're gonna do all the flippy corners and all the half square triangles at the start. So, Shelley, which do you want to tackle? Flippies or half square triangles?
How about, I don't know, flippies?
Okay, so you explain flippies.
Okay, first of all, I'll point it out on here where they go. There's flippies over the door here, and there's flippies around this wheel, and then there's a flippy over here in this corner. Okay, so let me just put those each up. Okay, so you need your flip piece of your door. Then you go put 2 of these up here on either corner. Do the flippies that go with the 1 inch squares that are of the
So you're going to draw
of your camper fabric.
You're going to draw a diagonal line on the
Right.
little corner piece.
Right, and then you flip it up this way, up. I know it's hard to see because these are so dang little.
But you're going to sew just inside of that line, that diagonal line, just towards the top more, so that then the flip comes up, it fills that whole corner. And you're going to do the same method on each of these. The only thing that's different is whether you're sewing to the above the line or below the line.
Yes.
Because of the orientation of the piece.
Yeah, just watch your orientation of how you sew so you end up with the
Correct.
camper part looking in the right corner. Yeah.
Yeah. The camper one's tricky, and she'll talk about it in just a second. The door, you're just filling in those corners, and the wheel you're filling in 2 adjacent corners of the same color.
Right. As you're sewing it doesn't matter, but how it orients, of course, is the trailer parts at the top and the sky parts at the bottom. Seems backwards, but that's how it is. Sky's on the bottom.
Okay, so then the one, and this one, I'll tell you, I did it wrong and I had to redo it. So pay attention on this one, because you can't do it just anywhere. It has to be aimed the right way.
Yes, hopefully you can see this line. Put it from this corner down to here. Then when you flip it, it's going to go like this, and your sky is going to be in this bottom corner.
Yeah, so you're going to orient that little piece of sky so the diagonal is in the upper left corner, and it goes kind of towards the middle.
Yeah, you can see that on hers, how that is there.
So it's going to go like this.
Right.
And I had it going like this, and it doesn't really look like a camper when you put it together that way.
Yeah, and it does matter when you're sewing it, because you can't turn it around and make it work if you don't do it right.
Yeah, you can't fix it. Okay, so that's all of the flippy corners. So we're going to do all of those, and you're going to press those, and press them how it fills the corner.
Yeah, trim them and then press them.
Yeah, sometimes you press it to, actually, that's the other part we have to mention. You want to look to see that it fills the corner. Don't press it. Trim to a 1/4 inch away from that line. Make sure you trim on the right side of the line, the correct side of the line, and then press it up, because sometimes you cut off the corner, especially on these little ones.
Yeah.
You could cut off the whole corner if you try to press it first.
That's true.
Okay. So we're going to do all of those, and then on the half square triangles, there's 3 different half square triangle types we have. not really types, but sizes. Okay, so the first one I'm going to talk about is this big one here in the corner. And this one, like Shirley was saying in the beginning, you're going to make two. You only need one of them if you're just making one block. If you're making two blocks like we are of the same colors, then you'll use them both. And so when I made this demo block, I already made my half square triangle. So it's sewn together, but it's not trimmed.
And this is using those 3 7/8 inch squares of sky and trailer.
Right, and so I'm going to tell you how to make those with one of the blocks I haven't made, which is these half square triangles here that go on the top and bottom of the right side of the trailer. And so you're going to either draw a line down the diagonal, or you're going to draw a line 1/4 inch away from the diagonal. That's how Shelley does it, and she sews on that line. I draw one line and I sew 1/4 inch away on either side. And then you trim it, you cut it on that line, and then press it. And these ones we press open on the half square triangles. And you're going to do the same thing with 3 sets for the trees, 3 sets of sky and tree top fabric. Okay, so
and there's one other one, right? Or did you mention that there was?
I already mentioned the big one.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so on these, so on the flippy corners, when you're done, that piece of fabric should be the same size as the underlying piece of fabric was that you started with. So if it was 2.5 by 5.5, and you put little corners on top of the door at the end, it still should be 2.5 by 5.5. On the half square triangles, these can come out a little bit oversized, and they always have these little dog ears that have to be trimmed off. So the sizing of the half square triangles, when you're done, the trees you're going to want to trim, and you'll end up with 6 of these treetop pieces, and they will trim to 2 1/4 inch in size. And when you're trimming, I don't know if we've ever gone over that, but it's best to, put a diagonal line on here and then trim off one edge just very scantly, and then turn it over and put the diagonal line on it, and then trim that to the right size.
In our other video, did we talk about that?
I think we have
another video about doing half square triangles.
That's called half squared.
Yeah.
Okay, so the trees trim to 2 1/4. The ones for the 2 that go on the left side of the camper, these ones trim to 2 inches. And this big one that's over here on the right side, that one trims to 3.5 inches. Okay,
should be pretty close once you actually sew.
Yeah, this one really, there wasn't much to trim off.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of, if anything, it's probably the trees that are maybe a little more oversized.
Yeah.
And you can tell we are not professional pattern makers, because if we were, I would have adjusted somehow to make the top of this tree intersect right with this, but we didn't, and we couldn't.
We could tell you we actually were thinking of something else when we were doing it, trying to do something.
Yes.
We won't talk about.
Well, I will mention it, because if it bothers somebody.
Yeah.
In all the camper squares that we saw of, there's a little tongue that sticks out of the camper.
Yeah.
And those are all applique blocks. So in applique, it's easy to put that little piece on there. But to put that little piece on this, without doing applique, we thought we'd align the tree so it kind of looks like it's covering it up.
Yeah, that was the point.
So that's the point of that. So hopefully that missing tongue on the camper doesn't bother you. It doesn't bother us at all. We don't even have a hitch on our car. So
I know.
Okay, so we're going to go away. We're going to do all of these parts, and then when we come back, we're going to start assembling the block. And I'll tell you, we're not going to come back and talk necessarily about these pieces unless they're in the part, because we're going to assemble this kind of in units.
Yeah, you can lay these out now on your mat or whatever you're doing, and where they go to.
Right, because we're going to assemble this part of the block. That's going to be part 1, and then the wheel part below these straight pieces is part 2, and then we have this door section, and then we put all that together with the top, and then we have the tree part, and then we sew that to the side, and we put the bottom on. So now you have an overview of how we're going to do this.
Okay.
All right. All right, so we have those half square triangles and flippy corners all done. I did forget to mention this. It really isn't important until now, but when we're sewing our seams, we do want you to use a scant 1/4 inch, which means just a thread less than a 1/4 inch.
Right.
Okay. Okay. So we're going to make the portion of the camper that's all of this part above the wheel.
It's on the left side.
On the left side. Okay. So for that, Shelley, what pieces do they need to have?
Okay. So to start with, we're going to need your half square triangle that you made, your big one you just made. That's of the sky and the camper.
And orient it with the sky up.
Right. And then you're going to need your window, which is 2 inches by 2.5 inches. And then you're going to need a camper piece that's 1 inch by 5.5 inches.
And where does
that one goes?
Oh, that's at below the very bottom piece.
Right.
Okay.
And then you're going to need another camper piece that's 1.5 by 2.5 that goes below the window.
Oh, below the window? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you're going to need one. Which one did I say? The 1 by 4 inches.
Yeah, this one. Yeah.
And then you're going to need one of the two pieces that are 2 inches by 3.5 inches. That's of the camper.
Right. And then do we say this 2 inch square?
Oh, I missed that one. The 2 inch square.
That goes above the window.
Right. And then
I might not have marked that. Oh, it's marked. Okay. So that's all the camper pieces.
And then you're going to. Oh yeah. Then the stripe,
the long piece of stripe.
Yeah, that's 1.5 by 5.5.
Okay, so to do this, it's very simple. Now we've got the trickiest part of this done. I mean, assembling the tree because you have to press stuff open is a little bit harder, but the rest of it, this is all just straightforward piecing pieces together. And they kind of have to go in the order we're mentioning because you have to complete little units to get the next unit on it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is sew this piece that goes below the half square triangle to it. Press that. I'm guessing press to the bigger piece. Okay, then sew the window and the piece of camper, and press that. And after you do that, then put this side piece on it that goes on the right side of the window. Press it, and then you're going to sew these two pieces together. Oh no. So this piece on the bottom.
Right.
That goes on after you sew this side one on. Sew that on, and it should be. That's the width you should have of that piece. Is the width of this unit. And then once that's all together, this will match this, and you're going to sew that together with this unit, and then press it, and then you're going to sew this piece of stripe on to the bottom, and then this piece of the camper right below it, and press that one. So pretty simple. Just you kind of have to complete the parts to make it. If it isn't matching the next piece, you've forgotten to sew something on.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to come back and we'll have that done, and then we'll move on to the wheel portion. Okay, so we've finished the top right portion of our camper, and this piece, if you want to measure it, should be 5.5 inches wide by 6.5 inches tall.
Okay.
Okay. So now we're going to make the wheel portion. And what pieces do we need to use here?
Okay, so we're going to need one piece of sky that's 1 inch by 1.5 inches. It goes on the right side of the wheel. And 1.5 by 3 inch goes on the left side of the wheel. And then from the camper pieces, we're going to need one that's 1 by 1.5. That's also on the right side of the wheel. And one that's 1.5 by 3.
That we put the flippy corner on.
Right.
And that flippy corner needs to aim down, okay?
And then we're going to need the wheel piece that you put together.
And make sure you have your camper pieces aimed up and the sky pieces aimed down. They should kind of match across. All the campers on the top part and all the sky is towards the bottom. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the easy part.
Okay, so to sew this together, you're going to take the left side pieces, sew those together. The right side pieces, sew those together. Press them. And then you're going to sew these to either side of the wheel and press that. And that should be it.
Yeah, then going to put it on the other one, or we coming back for that?
Yeah. So when you're done, that should be 5.5 inches wide And you're going to sew it to the bottom of this portion of the camper. And then the entire piece should be 5.5 by what, 8.5?
5.5 by 8.5, yes.
Okay. So when we come back, we'll have this left side, half of the camper done.
Right.
And we'll move on to the door. All right, it's kind of starting to look a little bit like a camper.
I know, we have a lot of the pieces done.
Yeah, and our stuff that fades into the background is now encased by something, so you can see our window and our wheels, and Shelley's stripe. Okay, so now let's work on the door section. And for this, which pieces do we need, Shelley?
Okay, you're going to need your door piece, which is 2.5 by 5.5 inches. And then you're going to need from the sky a piece that's 1.5 by 4, and it goes under the door. Then the piece that's, the 2 half-square triangles that you made.
That have camper piece and sky piece on it.
Right. And let's see.
So 2.5 inch square, right, above the door?
Yes, 2 inch square above the door.
I think it's 2.5.
Oh.
2.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2.5 inch. I'm sorry, 2.5 inch square above the door. Okay, I'm getting lost here.
Yeah, and the other one is the one kind of above it. That's the 2 by 3.5. It was the same size as this piece over here.
Oh yeah, okay.
But it goes.
Oh yeah.
But we turn it and it goes the other direction.
Right.
Okay, so that's, and then we also we're gonna add on one piece. We're gonna add that piece of sky that goes above the camper. That's 3.5 by 9. Okay, so that's at the end. So.
Did we mention the stripe?
Oh, didn't we?
Yep.
Oh yeah, and your last piece of stripe.
Yeah.
There's only one piece of the camper stripe. There's a little piece. Okay. So to put this together, we kind of have it clumped. There's like the door and the thing above it, the camper piece above it. You're gonna sew those together and press. And then you're gonna sew all of these pieces together. It's half square triangle, then camper piece, stripe piece, and then the other half square triangle. Make sure you orient those half square triangles so they're to the bottom and the top on the left.
Right.
And then you're gonna sew this piece to the door piece and press it. And then you sew this bottom piece on there and press that. So once that's all done, that piece should be is 4 inches by 8.5 inches. And that will then attach to the other side of the camper. And when you have that done, that whole section is 8.5 by 9 by 8.5.
Right.
8.5 tall?
Yes.
Okay.
8.5 tall.
By 9. And then we have, so once that's done and pressed, then you can sew this piece of sky to the top of it. And like I said, that piece is
9 by
3.5 by 9.
Yeah.
So if this piece here is not quite the 8.5 inches tall, then you might want to make this a little bigger. Or you can just wait till the end and use that piece of ground piece to adjust it to the right height. Okay, so we're going to come back and the camper will be done, and all we'll have left to make is the tree and then final assembly. All right, that camper is done.
Yes.
It's looking cute. I like that. Okay, so our next section, and we're almost done, is the tree. So, as Shelley said, gather all the pieces you got left except for the ground. But that should be the half square triangles we made of the treetops, the 3 parts of the tree trunk, which are 2 sky pieces and the trunk piece, and then the 1 square left of sky that goes above the tree.
Right.
So the first thing you're going to do, you're going to make sure you orient these trees so they look like a triangle tree.
Yes.
Shelley was questioning my purple trees, but I'm saying those are jacaranda trees in bloom. Okay, so you're going to sew each pair of tree top pieces together to make our 3-tiered tree. You're going to sew a sky piece on either side of the trunk. These, all of these pieces on the tree, you want to press the seam open. And then, after you make the little units, then you're going to sew those together, going up or down the tree, either way, and then sew the top piece on.
Right.
And how big should that final tree be?
After you've sewn this piece on, It should be 4 inches by 11.5 inches.
Okay, because it should match. Oh, did we say this was 11? Yeah, we did. This piece should be 11.5 at this point too. So get this tree sewn on, tree sewn together, then you can sew it to the camper. And we'll be back
with the last step.
Yeah, I mean, they're really easy. Should we just, oh my gosh, just sew the ground on it, okay? We weren't going to mention it, but after you're done, you've got this all sewn together, just sew that ground piece on.
And then we'll talk about sizing if we need to.
If it's not 11.5 inches tall, make that ground piece a little taller. If it's too tall, you can adjust it either at the top or the bottom, whichever you want, more sky, more
trim
ground,
it after.
Or trim it after, yeah. So we're going to come back with our finished block. All right, so it's done. We got through all those pieces.
I know. You know, we usually don't tackle ones that are, I guess you'd call complicated like this. We're just, you know, but you know, we pushed forward this year.
We did. We really wanted a camper block, some sort of a camper.
Yeah.
And there's just no way to do it without
paper piecing or appliquing.
Yeah, right.
To get it rounded or, you know.
I mean, I guess we could have made this and left out the tree, but you know, camping, you think of a tree, so we had to have a tree. All right, so this block should finish out at 12.5 inches square like all of our blocks. I can't really think of anything else. Yeah. I did most of my vertical seams when I'm putting this together, I did press open just because they were kind of lumpy, but that's up to you, how you want to do it.
Right.
I used kind of a leftover 2.5 inch strip that I had from a jelly roll, and I waited to cut it at the end because then I'd get the most from it. So, but it was, my sizing was fine. It was good.
But don't be intimidated by it. You know, we found that actually cutting out the pieces took way longer. I shouldn't say way, but it took longer than actually putting it together. So.
It did. And trust me, when we're cutting them out, the pieces are kind of in more random order, and we did try to order them by size in the list, so you can kind of look at common sizes.
Right.
Yeah, not really by section, but anyway, so yeah, don't. A lot of the pieces have to do with these little flippy corners and the half square triangles, and once you got those down, it really was not too bad. Okay, so like we said before, these blocks, if you're turning one in for the Guild, are due at the September meeting. And other than that, have a fun summer, and we will see you back here in August.